Welcome to our Modern Widows Club financial series that we're going to be doing all month in April, because April is actually, we're talking about financial health. So today we're going to be joined by someone I deeply admire to discuss understanding and diffusing financial anxiety. So say hello, Daniel Kopp.
Hello, I'm so glad to be here with you, Carolyn. You're so kind.
Yes, well, I'm just going to do a little bio here so people know who you are, besides being my friend.
Although that's good enough.
Thank you. So Daniel is a fee-only fiduciary financial planner, a financial therapist. That might be a first for some people. He's the founder of Wise Stewardship Financial Planning, where he helps young widows and widowers, as well as military members, organize their financial lives by aligning their money with their deeply held values. I am loving the sound of this. You leverage your personal experience as a widower to Sarah,
Yeah.
and you're also an Air Force veteran, to offer some of the deep level of engagement and connection with your clients. In addition to offering comprehensive, holistic financial planning services, um, you specialize in really working with younger widows dealing with financial anxiety
Yeah.
through the lens of financial therapy. And this combined approach blends therapeutic and financial competencies to help people reach their financial goals by thoughtfully addressing the financial challenges while at the same time attending to the emotional, psychological, behavioral, and relational hurdles that are intertwined.
It surely is. It's one big bowl.
Right? So, Daniel, you live in Sarasota, Florida, with your wife, Anna, and your son.
Yeah.
And you guys like to explore new places and try interesting cuisines, play board games, and you serve in your local church. Now, you're also on our Golden Committee here
That's
at
right.
Modern Widows
Yes.
Club. You volunteer and you help us be responsible with the funding that we receive and advise us on the best ways to just really increase our revenue streams, and just talk to us about money and everything in that. So I'm so grateful you're on the committees. You're such a voice of calm for us in many ways. And I think this conversation, for all of the widows that are on listening, or anyone who just happens to be on the call, I can attest that money is a hard and a very secret topic that we discuss at MWC. It's almost like there's a lot of anxiety and shame and guilt and just anticipation and talking, but eventually we have to talk about it because it touches every
Yeah.
aspect of our life.
Yeah.
So I really want to start with the first topic. The question is, how do you define what financial anxiety is in widowhood?
Yeah, that's a great question because financial anxiety might mean different things when you first hear it, especially if it's unfamiliar to you.
Mhm.
So, with that, we're generally talking about this idea that if someone is having challenges or, maybe even potentially challenges that go into the variant of unhealthy attitude towards thinking about engaging with or administering their personal financial situation in an effective manner. Now,
Mhm.
unhealthy, like we're thinking of that in terms of financial wellness. Like, for example, if you go to open up your mail and there's a bill in there, does it
Mm.
make you so physically, like, do there physical symptoms that you feel that you leave it there? You don't even open it, right? You're trying to avoid it. That might be a sign of financial anxiety. Especially in grief, this topic can get intermingled with just the feelings of sorrow and loss.
Mm.
Some of the research that I did through my master's in financial therapy at Kansas State was taking a look at widows who are dealing with financial anxiety, oftentimes because just based on the research that's shown the way households often divide up financial management, right? There's some
Mhm.
delegation. Someone will take a responsibility for one area versus the other. Oftentimes in our country, wives often don't do some of the big picture financial planning Lots of reasons for that. It doesn't really matter. But when they're thrust into that role, when you as the widow have to be the household chief financial officer, that CFO role,
Right.
maybe you didn't want to do it before. So it's new and it's different. And sometimes that financial anxiety can get mingled up with grief and separating one from the other. There's also research that's shown that when we receive benefits, some of that might be Social Security survivor payments or life
Mhm.
insurance proceeds. Research has shown that that can bring with it feelings of guilt. You even use the word shame. When we
Yes.
add onto that the fact that in our country we don't really talk about money well, if at all, and can create just this
Oh,
complicated challenge.
money or death.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now you're combining these together.
Yeah. So I guess the first thing for our listener is just to recognize that if you feel that, one, you're not alone. All right.
Mhm.
And that this is common, uh, typical, and
Mhm.
anytime you go to learn something new, I mean, think back. I always like to use the illustration of maybe teaching your children to ride a bike, or something when you learn something for the first time, right? Where the expectation that you became an expert on the very first day of trying it. No, I hope not, right? And maybe you comforted your children as they failed and failed and failed how to learn to ride a bike, but eventually they figured it out. Learning finances now in this new stage, coupled with the grief and the overwhelm, is going to be a process too. So give yourself grace and patience, and don't expect that you're going to figure it all out day one.
Yeah, it's I always I always like to tell like real stories of my own personal life. I had never balanced a checkbook
Wow.
when I
Yeah.
became widow. Now we had separate accounts, and I knew what I was needing to pay for, and I made enough money to pay for those things. Right? There was this agreement, but there was just always seemed to be enough money because I wasn't a big spender. Right?
Hmm.
So balancing it wasn't really close. And so now I'm managing a large account. I did receive some life insurance, and I honestly didn't know what to do with it. I mean, when you receive a large check and you're not used to managing money, the the number one thing for me was I want to be a good steward for this, and also how long can I make this last? Because I went from I was a stay-at-home mom for 1 month, and I went from $150,000 household to no money for 2 years
Yeah.
because I was so deeply in grief that I couldn't even fathom going to work for 18 months. I was a mess. I didn't have any family in town, and I had 2 young daughters. You have to take precedence and priority. So I really understand the anxiety that comes, and I hear it all the time in our community.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about when you opened your mail. I hear this a lot, that honestly, I've had ladies who have bags and bags and bags of mail because there's a lot of medical debt
Hmm.
left to widows, right? So those bills start coming in. What are some of the other signs that would you have seen and recognized when you say financial anxiety? Give us a couple of other examples, because I think the ladies are going to recognize themselves, and then we can have an honest conversation about it. And if anybody here has any questions, just put it in the chat because we can see it, and Daniel will see it as well, and we can address those. But what are the some of the other major signs that you see, that some behaviors in
Yeah.
response?
Great question, because it can look different based on our own money stories, because we
Mm,
all have those unwritten rules that we grew up with from our family of origin, how money was or talked about. So there's no one right way or one way that financial anxiety shows up. So avoidance is one. So we don't think about the problem. We don't open the mail. We let the money just sit in the bank account. Um, right. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to deal with it. And again, that's typical. That's expected in many cases, those early stages of grief. But if after months and months and months,
mhm.
you're still at that position, that's where you might want to look at, counseling with, say, a financial therapist or someone who can do it. You can find them at the Financial Therapy Association website. We didn't mention that earlier, but there are people
Okay.
out there who could help. So then some people might avoid, but another end of the spectrum might be vigilance, right? Highly vigilant. So now I'm going to attack this
Mm,
problem with watching every penny and having such a level of a control, right? We can't control all these other areas of our life, but we're going to try to control it over here. So that might be another way. And then the third way might be basically where just complete delegation. Um, Especially when I work with clients, I want them to always understand what's going on and why. But one of the challenges I've seen sometimes is widows say, "Well, just do it all for me. Please don't ask me any questions. Just do it all for me." And right, that's not always the most effective. So those are some examples, like complete
Yeah.
avoidance, highly vigilant, or just telling somebody else to do it for you. So if
Yeah.
you're feeling one of those, that might be signs you're dealing with something that's financial anxiety, far beyond even just the grief itself.
Right. That whole idea of you do it for me. I mean, it's kind of like you're replacing a spouse
Mm,
in
yeah,
some ways, right? You do it for me. I trust you. The other thing is what I was going to bring up was there's oh, I forgot what I was going to say. There was something really good that you said, and it was about this. Oh, I know what it was. So, and it just doesn't apply to the assets that we have. I mean, taxes. It's tax season.
oh
I
yeah,
I have come across women who haven't done their taxes for 5 years because I so wish you had been around, and now I know who to reach out to and who to refer. I didn't know that financial therapy was a thing.
yeah,
It makes so much sense. We just got back from the Shift conference in San Antonio, the Human First financial guidance, and all of are all about the human first experience. And I'm just like, I love this world because you care so much about the response that people are having with their relationship with money, because that's really what it is. It's like you said, you might have an origin story when you were growing up. Now that's overlaid with widowhood, and you have to figure out what is the anxiety coming from a place of reality, or is it an illusion that you think is actually happening,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So let's talk about some of the tools, the real tools and tips, because I think it's common to have anxiety. I had it. I had it for years. Every big decision I made, selling a house, starting a business, all of them.
Yeah.
I had to look at the whole landscape of what my life, and what was like mitigate the right risk, right?
Well, I'll preview. Robin is going to be joining you later this month. I think she's next week,
Yeah, she's
where
my best.
yeah,
Mhm.
she's going to be talking about this concept of basically placing some of these financial decisions into a now, soon, and later framework. So that is going to be extremely helpful. There's an overwhelming amount of decisions to be made in grief, right? I experience that. I see that all the time. All and with that, you're going to have the ability to. These things have to be done now. Everything else can be done sooner or later. So she'll talk more about that. So that would be
Yeah,
one thing.
yeah, exactly.
Back to the financial therapy piece, though, is um, you know that's just borrowing from the world of mental health and just
Mhm.
applying some of the same techniques and interventions when it comes to working with yourself, right? And so we mentioned the word shame earlier. I love the work of Brene Brown and her work around that. So there's some great resources about that applies here. Where if you're feeling shame, that like I hear this a lot. Maybe you have as well, Carolyn.
I do.
I should know how to do this. How many times
Mm,
have you heard that, right?
yes.
Okay, one, step back and imagine you're talking to a friend who came to you, similar story, right? What would you tell them if they said that to you, right? So that's combating that self-talk, sometimes
Mhm.
very negative self-talk that we have. So imagine you're having a dialogue with your friend instead of having the dialogue with yourself. You're going to be more gracious and understanding. And
Right.
another one comes from the world of narrative therapy, which is just the idea that you're thinking about yourself as the author of your own life story. We
Mhm.
have the past that's led us to where we are today. We cannot change anything that's happened up to this point, but we have the power to frame and rewrite that next story. For many people, that involves journaling, right? Writing down what you feel and why you feel it, and is gaining an ability to have that reflection time. So, talk to yourself like a friend, and then find a way to think about rewriting your own story.
Right. Right. And and I think the difficult part for our ladies is, we have these 7 pillars of healthy widowhood, right? Like this month we're talking about financial health. And I would say there are two different areas that are immediate in widowhood, in new widowhood. It's emotional and mental health, and it's
Mhm.
financial health.
Yeah.
And you're combining these two, which is so fantastic because I identified this a long time ago, and I was like, these two are they're parallel, they're happening at the same time, and so there is this relationship between them. So everything that I've learned from you made so much sense, and at Shift I learned even more, listening to you on stage. What are some of the things, I mean, we that you want to share just about that, because I think it's so unknown that people realize that there's actual financial advisors that are also financial therapists. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Well, I was just giddy when I found that out.
Well, it's a relatively new subset of the profession, so
Okay.
hasn't been around for about 10, 11 years now. So it's
Okay.
it's still a growing field. But I guess I would say, so like if you're working with a financial professional or you've had experiences with that and all they want to do is talk about, just the money, that's a necessary but maybe not sufficient range to be able to address the whole component of people. You even talked about that earlier, like aligning money with values, what's important to you. So, that's an opportunity to go out and interview other people, right? Don't just hire the first person. And then even back to the idea of the self work that goes along with that. Um, Combating the financial anxiety that you face is, I love question I love to ask people, and audience, reflect on this yourself. Think back to a time in your life, maybe when you did something really well in your finances. That could have been something like saving up for a specific goal that you hit,
Mhm.
or just managing a smaller area maybe than you face now. Like, what were the things that went really well, and how could you apply some of those parallel principles to do it now? We are all, I found, and I know this to be a fact, we are all more competent in this ability than we think, right? Sometimes it's just the self doubt. So, you know, if other people, like your financial professional, isn't helping with that, that broaden your circle. And two, recognize that you have had this ability. Think back to times in the past when you've done it well.
Right. It's so true. And what I love about Modern Widows Club community is when we get into our groups, whether they're virtual or in person or really in any way, shape, or form, we learn. Like I was that person that hired the first advisor. I don't even remember who referred me. It didn't turn out to be a good experience. But then after that, I got smarter and I started doing a lot of individual study, and I felt more confident.
Yeah.
Right. I was that person who didn't feel confident. But then I realized I actually knew a little bit more than I thought I did. And I needed to turn that confidence on and take control because I was the client.
You are always in charge as the client. Absolutely.
Right? And so it's like, this is my money, and I want it to, for me, it was very early on, of course, because so I'm thinking about both retirement and supporting my family and saving for college. I was overwhelmed.
But I think you hit on that point right there. It was a journey, it was a process. Just like the journey of grief changes, evolves, ebbs over time, very much this financial competency, financial anxiety is a journey too. And it's not that we're ever going to be rid of it. I have worked with people who have more money than they could ever possibly spend in their lifetime, and they still have financial anxiety. It's not a dollar figure in the bank. It's
That's
a
a good one.
feeling of enough, the contentment, the satisfaction that comes, and that's self work that we all have to do.
That's right. Megan says, I saved for my books in college. Investing in my education was huge, and still today makes me so happy.
Yeah,
So
that's a
that's
great way to reflect back on that. Yeah, excellent point.
right. So I made that decision. I remember when I had a nanny that helped me with my daughters, and she would not have me pay her until the end of the summer because she wanted to make sure that that money went towards her college instead of spending it on summer fun. Right now, and now she's a financial advisor. She's my financial advisor. So she had habits back then that actually followed through into the future. So that is actually really great advice to look back and see where you did do a good job, because you're right. We're probably more competent than we realize.
We're just forgetful sometimes, especially, and that's the fog of grief, right? It makes us
Oh,
forget a lot of things.
yes, it sure is. And yeah, and it's so prevalent in the first 2 years from the research that we have found. So
Yeah.
really showing your grace, especially those first couple of years, is, it's so important to hear and be praised for, just kind of overcoming and maneuvering through that. Well, I guess we're at the, you want to say anything last? This is coming to the end, and I'm going to share a little bit about what's coming on Monday, but last word.
Yeah, so if you're interested in learning more about this, right, and you're interested in reading, one of the interesting books I've given to clients lately is Mind Over Money by Doctors Brad
Mhm.
and Ted Klontz, a father-son team. They're some of the pioneers in this field of financial therapy. It's a little bit older book, but it still has some great principles. They've written some other ones if you're interested to explore, but Mind Over Money is a starting place to start to explore your own money journey.
I like that. Thank you. Okay, well, Monday, we are going to have a conversation with Robin Young, to discuss financial transitions, what to do now, soon, and later, right? That's going to be 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here, same place. Thank you so much, Daniel. This was wonderful chat to have with you. It's good to see you on video. It was better seeing you in person in San Antonio.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. All right. You guys, if you have any more questions, go ahead and post them, and we'll send them over to Daniel if he doesn't see it on his own, because I know he follows Motor Widows Club. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.